Hi everyone, this is Justine Rhodes, your host for Mentally About Us. This podcast is dedicated to breaking the boundaries surrounding the mental health conversation. The stories you'll hear on this podcast are real, raw, and relatable, and come from people from different backgrounds because we believe mental health is global and does not discriminate. Welcome to the unfiltered side of the internet. Hey everybody, welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine, and today I have a therapist on this episode, which you guys are totally gonna love because who doesn't want advice from a therapist? So I have Olivia Lima. She is a Latin millennial therapist. She has experience working with school-age children, teens, adults, couples, and families. She specializes in the treatment of complex trauma, intimate relationships, communication, socializing, peer and workplace bullying, body image, self-esteem, anxiety, depression, codependency, and inner child healing. She is a strong advocate of the LGBTQIA and people of color communities, and she's always here to be authentic and to support people. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. I am so glad you're here. I've been wanting you on this podcast, and I'm so grateful that you were able to come on here and take my invitation because it's such a privilege to have a therapist on this podcast.
My pleasure, because I really support and appreciate what you do for people every single day.
Oh, thank you. That means so much. So, are you ready to talk about CPTSD today?
I am so ready. One of my favorite topics.
I've never heard of it until the last 12 months ago. And so I'm really excited to talk about it because CPTSD, I think it's not in the what is that book called for the psychology?
DSM-5?
Yeah,
The
it's not in there,
DSM-5,
right?
yeah.
It's
No,
not in
it's
there, right?
not.
Yeah, so it's
No.
kind of like why? First of all, why? Start there. Do you know why?
That's a really good question that I don't have the answer to, but it really should be in there.
Yeah, because I did do an undergrad in psychology, and I've never heard of CPTSD. I know what PTSD is. So, a lot of people may not know that they have this. I mean, I discovered that I do, and I had no idea. So, for the people who don't know what CPTSD is, which is complex PTSD, can you explain what it is and how it differs from PTSD?
Yeah, of course. So, gosh, my therapist years ago when I was in my 20s, I'm 37 now. When I was in my 20s, she was before her time and she was like, I think you have some kind of PTSD. And I was like, what? And my understanding of that at the time was like a veteran or a natural disaster or being in an accident. And that is what PTSD is. It's an isolated incident that occurs in your life that changes the trajectory of your life. But CPTSD is ongoing, repeated exposure to trauma. And it's things that the average person would think, oh, just the way I was living my life. These are just the things that happened to me. They happen to everybody else. Not really, right? And so things like bullying, things like having a parent who is an addict, things like witnessing domestic violence amongst your parents or an ugly divorce. Those are things, sexual assault or abuse. Those are things that constitute as CPTSD and a repeated exposure to dysfunction.
Yeah, actually, when because one of my challenges, not challenges, like previous trauma was being severely bullied and having to move schools and such, and a lot of people just say everybody gets bullied, but it's not true. Like, I mean, for example, right now I have nieces and nephews, and I've noticed that one gets bullied and one doesn't. So that just kind of just proves statistically, it isn't, it's proof right there. It's not everybody. And so when I tell people that, they're like, and I say, oh, yeah, you've been bullied, right? They're like, no. Or if I talk about childhood, like, oh, that happened to you, right? They're like, no. I'm like, well, what was I living?
Yeah. Not only that, though, but even if, for the sake of argument, everyone got bullied, not everyone would have a response rooted in trauma. Everyone's temperament is different and predisposition to things is different. And so two people can experience the same life event and one may develop a trauma response and the other one may not.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting. Because I feel like in my family, I'm like the most affected between me and my sister when it comes to trauma. Can we like dive a little bit more into that?
Sure.
Actually. So my sister is about like 6.5 years older than me. And I always thought to myself, I'm like, we grew up with the same parents in the same household. I mean, we didn't actually have the same school experience. So she went to the same school, same grammar school up until 8th grade, and same high school up until 12th grade and such. And then for me, I went to the one of the schools up until 2nd grade. I was moved because my sister graduated, so my mom didn't want to drive to the same school just for me. And then I moved to a different school and I was there for 3 years. That's the one that I was severely bullied in. And I had to move that school because it was so bad I couldn't even like I just didn't want it was hard to go to school every day when you're constantly bullied. Like not just by the students, but like the teachers didn't even like have my back. Like I was even like in a way bullied by the teachers and the principal didn't do anything about it. So when nothing was being done, my mom's just like, well, we have to move you. And so I moved to a different school in 5th grade. And let me tell you this, and I remember is that when I was a new kid there in 5th grade, during recess, we're in the gym, and there was these kids like in the corner just talking and hanging out, which is totally normal, right? And then I'm standing by like the stage or whatever, and I automatically had anxiety and felt worried that I was like, oh my God, they're probably talking shit about me. Like they probably don't like me. And at that time, I didn't realize that that is abnormal. And I think because I dealt with like so many years of people talking shit about me and bullying me and like people not liking me that I just assume that everybody who meets me is like not gonna like me.
I'm really, sad to hear that because you're such a spectacular person. So it's hard to believe that anyone wouldn't like you. But unfortunately, that is a reality that we all experience, right? We're not everyone's cup of tea for whatever reason. But I think important thing to take away from here is that when you're dealing with dynamics in families, like siblings, for example, times if you raised, I'm not saying that people's parents are the worst or the best. I'm saying people's parents are human, right? And so everyone makes mistakes, even though they did the best they could, right? Those two truths can exist. All that
Mm-hmm.
to say, the way that your parents raise you, they might raise you differently and identify you differently. They might say, for example, oh, this is a little bit more sensitive. Oh, this
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more resilient. And so, based on those roles that they place on you, that then affects the way that you enter the world and the way you respond to certain things around you.
Yeah. That actually makes sense. And the most challenging thing is that people, I mean, you're educated obviously on this because you're a therapist, but most people just assume that we're all the same, that we all have the same brain or built the same. But it's like, I was clearly born more sensitive than my sister. That's just probably the physiological part of it.
Absolutely.
And fun fact, years ago, I had a test done on me that my psychiatrist did on me for medication purposes to check for like sensitivity and such. And it's basically it said, are you familiar with the MTHR gene?
I'm not.
MTHNR? Pretty much some people call it the motherfucker gene.
Uh,
Because it pretty much means like when I was reading up on it at like 3 in the morning, because why not do that at 3 in the morning? It was pretty much saying people who have this gene are more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder than people who do not have this gene. And the way you get that gene is obviously genetic. So like you think you're supposed to only actually no, you're probably supposed to have a period, I think. So I think the way how we learned in I think it's biology with the chromosomes. No, so it's
yeah.
pretty much like it got passed. Like one of my parents had it, and so it got passed down. Actually, no, maybe like the parent had. I think you're supposed to have some, but if you have too many,
I
so
see.
it's like it passed down more to me than my sister. Is basically what it sounds like. I mean, I don't know. She never got a test done, so I don't know her, but it kind of makes sense. And my mom, she's more sensitive as well. And I mean, I feel like everybody has problems with their mental health and such, but I think some people it's just they're more like hypersensitive to
Sure.
being mistreated. So
Absolutely.
I was the fortunate person
I was the
to,
fortunate one too, sis.
yeah. But I actually like wonder if I didn't have like that hypersensitivity in how I am, like where would I be today? You know?
I think about that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that sucks though is like I think it helps a lot with my creativity and thinking outside the box, but a little hard like working in society. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Moving on to the next. So, how is CPTSD diagnosed and what challenges do mental health professionals face when it comes to diagnosing?
Again, there is no formal diagnosis, but it would be based on the presentation. So, your client, if you are seeing a therapist, the client would have to exhibit a variety of different trauma responses as a result of prolonged or repeated exposure to trauma. So, it would have to be, I love to reference the four major trauma responses: the fawn response, the fight response, the flight response, and the freeze response. So they might exhibit all four at different times, but we all have a default. Like I'm a fawn girly, that's my default. It's the people pleasing one. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these tendencies are so deeply rooted as a direct result of the CPTSD. And people assume it's just flashbacks and nightmares. And while that can be true for some, sometimes it's just a feeling. Sometimes you just go somewhere or you're around certain people or certain things are said or not said. And the feeling that you experience inside is indicative of discomfort and distress. It's an internal process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm trying to think of what I am because I feel like I experience all of them.
Yeah, at different times we're always in all of them. But my default is definitely fawn. I am fawn girly.
I feel like I'm more of like freezing. Like I try to avoid things and which is like actually would kind of suck if I like actually people are trying to murder me or something. Like if like if someone comes at
Yeah.
me, like probably if someone comes at me with a knife, I'll probably just sit there and be like,
Okay. This is what we're doing. Got it.
I mean, I won't actually know until I mean, hopefully it never happens. Hopefully I never have to come, see how my body would react. But I think when it comes to being yelled at, I'm definitely frozen. Like I've noticed this a lot. Like my most recent one, like a big scream, like a big screaming and like really abusive was an experience I had in college when this roommate started screaming at me and telling me off. And it actually came out of nowhere. Like she just randomly came into
Wow.
her room and started just fucking yelling at me.
Wow.
Like I'm not even lying to you. I mean, obviously, it wasn't for like it wasn't she just randomly woke up one day and was like, let me go yell at Justine. Clearly there was a lot that was in behind the scenes that she wasn't communicating with me. She had like bad communication skills. Like there was a lot which I should have a whole podcast episode about this, which I'll probably bring in right now because it's hard for me to tell the story when I'm talking to myself. Pretty much what happened was, long story short, she was acting like first we were like really good friends in the beginning, and then she started kind of like distancing herself from me and just kind of being like passive aggressive. And
Okay.
I went to her and I was like, hey, like, are we okay? And she was like, no, we're fine. I'm like, okay, cool. But then it just kept happening. I just had this feeling that she didn't like me. And the thing is, it's like, it was weird because she was really cool with me and we were going to like parties together. She's inviting me. Like, I was so happy about like being good friends with my roommate. And then when she just started distancing herself from me, and then you and I both know I was bullied and I was treated like shit growing up. So this is honestly like putting me into a whole spiral. And then so yeah, so for a good like I think it was like the whole semester she was being sketchy like that. Like one thing that she did was first like no one would clean the bathroom. That's one thing that was disgusting. And I was cleaning the bathroom during finals week and I was like someone got to do it. So I was cleaning it. And then I told the girls and I said, "Hey, for all of your like shampoo conditioner if they can have it in a caddy because we had like the disability apartment, so they had like the seat thing, but we were using it as kind of like holding our stuff, which is what we didn't realize that it was creating mold, like black mold.
Mhm.
So yeah, we didn't think that. But then I noticed that when I was cleaning, so I just say like, hey, this probably is dripping water. Can we just all agree to do on the caddy and such? No one responded to me, so I was like, okay, whatever. Maybe they just said, oh, like in their head, okay. The next morning, I go into the cleaned bathroom that I cleaned, and I see that girl. She put her stuff on there. And by the way, we had like it was an apartment, 2 bedroom apartment, and there's 3 in 1 room, 2 in the other room. So yeah, so she did that. I mean, everyone else didn't do anything to piss me off. I think they did what I said, but she literally put her stuff there, and I'm like, she's purposely trying to piss me off right now. Like she's trying to get a reaction out of me. I think that's what she was doing, but I wasn't. I'm not going to give her that, right? And then so then we went home for the Christmas holiday, and then we I think that's when I started my YouTube channel actually that season, and I came back. And then she said, like, oh, I think her boyfriend was talking about my YouTube. He saw my YouTube channel, I think, because I was tweeting it or whatever, because we all follow each other on Twitter. And then she was like, oh yeah, your video was cool. And I'm like, okay, thanks. Like, it was just a nice encounter. And then later on, I think there was some other break for a week. I can't remember. It was Easter. That's what it was. It was a Easter break. And then her boyfriend just tweeted something about sunflower seeds. Like, it was something super random. And I think I just responded back that I like sunflower seeds too. Like, it was something like that. And it wasn't weird for me to reply because I knew him. He would stay over at the apartment. He's a nice, friendly guy. Right? So I literally just said, oh, I have sunflower seeds. I like sunflower seeds too, which I do. And then so coming back from that break, literally a day or two, she comes into my room. She starts screaming at me. I think that was like her last, like, she's had it with me, whatever I did to her. And she started screaming at me, like telling me that something's wrong with my brain. I should get a scan and get it checked out, like shit like that. And
Ooh.
then so she like one who bought the TV for the living room, and she was like, I don't want you using my TV. This I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm just sitting here, just getting yelled at. I didn't respond to her. Like, I think I froze. One thing, I froze. Second, I'm just like, I'm not going to turn this into a screaming match. Like, what's the point of that? And then another thing too is that the other roommate was sitting in the room and she didn't do anything.
Oh,
Yeah, so there was another girl in the room, and I think she froze herself
yeah.
because she just sat there. And then, but later on, after was it graduation? Yeah, after we graduated college, this was like a whole year and a half later, actually. She texts me after we graduate, and she apologizes to me. The girl who didn't say anything, not the girl who yelled at me, the girl who didn't say anything. And she was like, I'm so sorry that I didn't stand up for you that one time. Like, to be honest with you, I was a little scared myself. I didn't want to get involved. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get that. You're in a position where you literally seeing somebody getting abused, getting screamed at. Last thing you want to do is get on their bad side, and you're the next target.
Makes
So
sense.
this person pretty much targeted me and was like, and like I said, this was the end of the school year too. So this was like, obviously we met in fall. This happened like after Easter, which means there's like one more month of school. So it's like she waited until like the end to completely like blow up on me and traumatize me. And the crazy part too is that right before, actually no, I don't think I was even like at that point really staying there anymore. I was kind of staying more at my ex-boyfriend's. Had his apartment. Thank God, like I had him, because I couldn't sit there with all of that bad energy.
I don't
So I've
blame
been living with
you.
so I've been living with him, and then I only came back to the apartment to pick up my car keys to get into the car and drive to I had a doctor's appointment. And that was the only reason I was there. Little did I know, I was like, let me just go and get my car keys, and then I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. She decided to just come at me. And then so that same day, I had to actually get an MRI done on my neck. And I'm just like, I was so like, oh, should I ask him to do on my brain too? Because apparently she says that I need it on my brain because I'm so fucked up or whatever. It's just, yeah. At first, and I'm like, honestly, at the time, I was just kind of like, whatever. But in reality, any person would bet her. I think I just kind of in my head laughed at it, like, wow, she must be really hurting herself, you know? And at that time, I was like 21 years old, 20, 21, I was 20 years old. So I was not a child anymore. At that point, I built enough confidence to not be completely pushed down by somebody, you know?
I mean, that really definitely sounds like you froze in that moment, and I'm really sorry that you experienced that. I think the bottom line is that in situations like that, it's really remarkable that even at such a young age, you were able to still have empathy for her in your head and be like, well, maybe she's really hurting. I'm like, wow. that wouldn't have been the thought process of so many. So many people would have been like, oh, hell nah. Who does she think she coming at like that?
I mean, honestly, I don't remember if I thought like empathy wise then. I think now I think about it.
Okay, like
I
in
think,
retrospect.
yeah, maybe now, like me, how I'm more educated about, I mean, that's what I'm assuming. Like, I mean, obviously it affected me if I'm still talking about it today. I mean, I don't like harp on it every day, but it's just like a story that I can remember very detailed.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's seriously. So I got a question for you actually. So with CPTSD, if I had a traumatic moment just like that in adulthood, can that could I guess well, when does it develop? I guess. I mean, I don't know if you can know how to answer that question, but when it's like, what if I had a good childhood and then people start being a bitch to me? You know what I mean?
Well, that's a little bit different, right?
Okay.
What I will say is that in my experience treating CPTSD, let's say there's, trauma during childhood, and then this incident, like what happened to you, occurs to someone in adulthood, that would trigger childhood wounds. That would trigger similar feelings that came up when you were a child and you felt otherwise powerless and helpless.
Mm.
So it would trigger the similar feelings. It would be familiar. So
Yeah.
it would add to the existing plate. It wouldn't
Okay.
be its own experience. Now, if your childhood was otherwise unremarkable and that happened to you, that sounds more like PTSD at that
You
point,
think? Yeah.
because it would be an isolated incident. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So when people think of PTSD, at first, when I knew for people who don't have much knowledge about mental health overall, when you say PTSD, they automatically think of like war, right?
Yes.
Which we know that's not like it can be people who are raped in a car accident. But the situation that I went through is that if that was like that, just I had a good childhood and they said that was it, that would be considered like a PTSD.
If you had a response to it rooted in trauma responses, yes. If you experienced flashbacks, potentially, some people do, some people don't. If you had, a variety of hypervigilant moments and bodily sensations of discomfort, maybe in situations thereafter where people were loud or people were screaming, or situations where there was a lot of noise and you experienced like heightened sensory sensitivity, things like that.
Oh, that actually
Mhm.
makes sense because when people do yell, I like get super anxious.
Me too.
I can't deal with that. Like I can't deal with people yelling at, well, not even just yelling at me, just yelling at anybody. Even like lately,
Mm.
loud noises have been challenging for me too. I mean, with I always kind of like wonder about because, like I said, with PTSD, I've always thought like it being like something extremely like traumatizing, like getting raped or getting into a severe car accident. Like that's how I think about it. I didn't think of being yelled at as something that would be the level of PTSD. So,
Yeah.
is there something you can kind of like debunk on that for people who may not even know they're suffering from PTSD? Hey guys, pausing the podcast here. Hope you guys are enjoying it. If you are, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, leave a review. That would be amazing. But I just want to talk about what I am currently wearing. If you can see me, most likely I'm in audio for you. But if you don't know and you just found me on looking for a podcast. On mentallyabadass.com, we do sell apparel and it's adorable. Y'all should check it out right now. If you can't see me, I am wearing a shirt that says, All I want this year is sleep. I'm sure you can relate to that. So, want to hop on, let you guys know. Also, we have a newsletter that we'll love you to sign up for so we can stay connected. We send it once a month. So, don't worry, we're not going to harass you. And also, don't forget to follow our Instagram account at Mentally a Badass. All right, now back to the show.
I think that the bottom line is that although we've made a lot of progress as a society, we live in a world that uh, things like being yelled at, like that's the norm. Oh, fuck it up, Buttercup. We all got yelled at. We all got spanked. We
Yeah.
all got bullied. And the bottom line is that that's not fair. And you could
Yeah.
absolutely be suffering from CPTSD based on a history of bullying, based on witnessing domestic violence, having a parent who's an addict, et cetera, et cetera. These events that the world has made you believe, oh, that big of a deal, other people go through it too, are actually really life altering for some. and you deserve a
Hmm.
safe space to unpack that.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I feel like I wish people can understand that. And I hope that the next generation of parents can, stop with that. I mean, it's also, I mean, there's times where like it's kind of hard also. I mean, that's a hard one because would never like want to yell at a kid, right? I did do
Right.
substitute teaching, and I'm pretty like patient with kids, especially with my background and such. But sometimes it's like I don't know. Like it's like what can a parent do if they're like really to that point where they can't, like the child's not is not listening to them, like obviously they're not gonna hit. Thankfully my parents never hit me. It's easier to just like not lay a hand, but like
Yeah.
what do you recommend they do in that case and not go to yelling, you know what I
Well,
mean?
I just want to validate that being a parent is the hardest job in the world. So I just want to validate that. And that we have to give ourselves grace for the difficult moments. What I will say is the key is two things. One, emotion regulation in front of the child. You should be modeling that. So the child is going to test your spirit, right? You need to you need to model emotion regulation skills. Be like, you can actually say, I'm actually feeling really frustrated right now and I'm feeling really activated. I think I need some space from this conversation. I really love you, but I'm going to come back to this conversation. You can absolutely do that. That's healthy to do. Or you can say, hey, can we both just take a deep breath right now? Because mommy or daddy, I'm feeling really frustrated right now.
How do you explain that to, let's say, a toddler? Because the terrible twos, I've actually have well, you just said I've done that. Like I've taken care of toddlers and such, and it can be like challenging. I mean, I'm not a mother, but I've just experienced what a mother could deal with while taking care of a toddler.
Sure.
I believe I did that. Like I didn't I don't think I've ever yelled. I don't know. I didn't, especially since it wasn't even my kid. I know I didn't. So one thing I know for a fact, I didn't, because it's not my kid. I would never do that. I mean, I shouldn't do it anyway, but you know what I mean. But I think I did say that I was um, frustrated or something like that. But
Yeah,
toddlers may not understand what that means. So what happens if a person has a toddler?
that's a hard question. And I would love for you to have my best friend on the show who is a therapist and she's an expert on this particular area. But what I can say is to use age appropriate language, and it also depends on the development of the child as well, their level of
Yeah.
comprehension for what you're expressing. The repair, there's nothing as
Hmm.
important or as key as the repair. You can apologize to your toddler, you can come
Yeah.
back around and say, hey, I'm really sorry that I got frustrated and that you saw that, I'm really sorry about that. I know that I hurt your feelings, you
That
know
makes sense.
like and accountability. Never too young to that as a toddler.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I actually saw some videos about the repair thing. I have another question, and this could just be a me thing. So I had an experience when I was in eighth grade where my mother blew up on me, and she said some things that were very hurtful, which we still today have had these conversations. She still like apologizes, but she said stuff to me like, "My whole life's a mistake," was one phrase, and that stuck with me. But I do remember when she had that blow up on me, right? And I went upstairs crying naturally, and then my dad did tell her, you need to apologize to her, like that was way out of line. And so my mom did. She was like, Justine, come down. And she's like, okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have acted that way. But like I still feel like today, I don't know, I feel like I never really healed from that. Like if I remember that so clearly, like doesn't mean that I don't know. Like what's your thought
Hmm.
process on that?
My thought process on that is that you, your child, is still struggling with that because remember, you're an adult now. We as adults, we can rationalize those type of things. We can go back in time and say, you know what? My mom was probably wrestling with her own inner child. It's not okay, and I
Mhm.
can hold her accountable. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I can make space for my emotions around what she did. But when you're a child and
Mhm.
you're in that moment, remember, you're eighth grade, you're still developing. You're still during a really critical time period. So You don't have the capacity to be like, well, my mom is struggling with her wounded inner child too, and that's why she
Mhm.
popped off. You can't do
Popped
that.
off.
Literally. So in those moments, with the message our inner child sends to us is we did something wrong.
Right.
And that is really hard to get past, but a lot of trauma work, trauma therapy really helps to unlock some of that.
Yeah, and like I feel like this is something today I still really struggle with. Like I'll still bring it up, and then my mom's just like, she says that well, first of all, she just doesn't remember it. It was one of those things. I'm like, yeah, if it was a
Oh,
day or something like that. Well, I mean, if she really does remember, I'm not gonna like, you know. But obviously, I remember because of trauma. But and like they say, oh well, it was a random Tuesday, mom, for you.
yeah, really. But for me, it
but
was
but
different.
I mean, yeah. So she said that, but she wasn't gaslighting me, being like, "Oh, it never
Okay.
happened." Like she wasn't doing that. But she was like, I don't remember that. I'm like, okay, well, it did happen. And then she did say sorry multiple times, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just something with myself. I need to practice more forgiveness. I mean, I don't like me and my mom have a good relationship. It's not like we're not talking or anything like that. I think it's just hard. I guess it's just hard for me to like let go of what she said to me. You know what I mean?
And I just want you to make space for that. That's okay. It's okay that you're struggling with that. That doesn't mean you don't love your mom and that you're not in a
Mm-hmm.
good space with your mom. I think what I like to think about it as is that that's the adult part of you that's like, you know what? I really wish I would have had me at the time to step in for me and be like, that's not cool. You should not be speaking to her like that. You know?
Yeah.
You have to make space for your inner child. Your inner child is still hurting. It lives in us each and every day.
Yeah, I'm doing shadow work. Did I tell you that?
I love that for you.
Yeah, I'm doing that. It's actually super triggering in a good way. But it did say in the beginning of the book that you're gonna cry. It did
I'm
say that, and
ready.
it's talking about like your ego and your inner child, and like name your ego. I forgot what I named her. I should probably name her again. But yeah, it's really good. I'm like halfway through it. And then also, I'm actually with my therapist. I'm doing DBT. I just started with
Oh,
her.
DBT is excellent. Yeah, so a lot of trauma work has to do with working with the different parts of ourselves. So I love that you're making space for the ego and you're making space for the inner child and you're identifying these things. That is so important to do so that you know what part you're in when you're experiencing emotions. So
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah, I just got the book and it's like a freaking textbook.
I gotta get
Have
it.
you ever Yeah, no, it's so big. Like I gotta definitely after this show you what it's like over there.
Show me.
But later. I'm not gonna get up from my table right now. But I will. Okay, cool. So let me actually we already kind of talked about we were talking about some treatments, right? Like treatment options. Well, I guess DPT can kind of be helpful. I guess. I don't know. I'm assuming.
So let's talk about different treatment options. It really varies with each client, right? And
Hmm.
for me personally, what I like to use and implement, and I'm not certified in this yet, is IFS, internal family systems, which is where you work with the different parts of yourself and you kind of develop that understanding for the different parts of yourself. Okay, I'm in my inner child right now. My inner child is feeling this way. It's saying this. It's experiencing this, right? So there's a lot of that I do. DBT is excellent for emotion regulation skills, right? So behavioral therapy, excellent for emotion regulation. It really helps you when you feel like you're going from 0 to 100. It helps you understand. Like your body sends you signals before you get to
Hmm.
100. Your body lets you know, hey, you're about to get to 100. How do we now come down from that in a healthy way? So yeah, DBT is excellent. Also excellent for borderline personality and severe treatment resistant depression. Somatic practices. So, a lot of movement, a lot of nervous system regulation techniques, grounding techniques, definitely
Hmm.
great. CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. That's just up to the client.
Yeah, that's true. I've done like CBT, pretty much like every therapy, except now I'm switching over to DPT. So, what would you say are the differences between CBT and DPT?
CBT, there's a strong focus in changing the way you think in order to change the way you feel, and therefore the change you excuse me, and therefore the way you behave. So it's a trickle down effect in theory. You change the way you think, you change the way you feel, you change the way you behave. That sounds very good on paper. And again, it's really effective for some people. But for some other people, like your girl here, because I'm a therapist in therapy, I'm just like changing the way I think. Ha, my anxiety at that. My anxiety is like, ha ha ha, we're not going to change that. So that's where DBT I love, because DBT focuses more on skill building and emotion regulation techniques that are really strong that you can implement when you're like really feeling dysregulated.
Yeah. No, that actually makes sense. I feel like cognitive is definitely more active to your current day-to-day life. So we all struggle with like negative thoughts, and
Sure.
especially being surrounded by people and the being like negative people, you kind of attach yourself to their mindset, and so you kind of have
Yeah.
to focus to change your mindset and also your behavior. They say your thoughts determine your reality, and it is your behavior, it is your outside. What could be inside is going to show in your outside. Well, DPT, as you were saying, is really like a skill set of, if you are experiencing an event and you're struggling, you learn how to not jump off a bridge pretty much. And
Yeah.
it sounds horrible.
Absolutely. Please don't do it. But I
It's like,
think,
yeah.
you know what? The problem is that times with CBT, and again, I have found that it's really effective for some, not as much for others. We are not always in the headspace to reason with our anxiety. We're not always in the headspace where we can be like, you know what, anxiety, you're just doing your thing right now. I get that you're anxious. We're not always in the space to do that, to be that rational, which is why the skill building is like, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and debate with my anxiety right now about how I don't have a brain tumor for the 80th time. So I'm going to get some ice and put it on my face and do some grounding techniques to help me feel more balanced and help my body release some of this stress.
Yeah, and the challenge that I had, like, it's a health thing, health scares as well. Like, if I'm having some type of symptom, it's like WebMD. I'm
Always.
dying always, and then
Always.
especially since I was like having some challenges with my eye, I was always just like thinking the worst thing. Which WebMD can be so horrible. I think I still low key kind of do that, but I try to like. I feel like it's an addiction.
It, well,
It's an addiction.
funny you say that, because a lot of people that have an OCD diagnosis, the rumination that there's something seriously wrong with their health, and then the compulsion to Google and Google and Google. And so, yes, that is a form of health anxiety, but there can also be that OCD component. So,
Do I have
just some food
OCD
for
now?
thought. Just some food for thought.
Are
I
you
do.
diagnosed with OCD?
Not yet, but I have it.
Oh my gosh. Actually, I want to talk about that a little. I want to dive into that real quick, actually. So, do you think people have of a little bit of OCD tendencies in them? You
you
know,
know,
because as of what you were just saying, as I have that compulsion, but I don't. It's kind of hard. Like, first of all, I don't want to add to my collection of mental health diagnoses. Let's just start there. I don't want to like add it on and be like, man, I'm really fucked up. Like, I got bipolar, I got BPD, I got CPTSD, I got ADHD. Just add all the freaking letters in the alphabet. You know, like I don't. I mean, it's not like I can say I don't want because it's like my brain, but like I don't want to jump to, oh, because I just do this. Now I have OCD. So
so
help me not think I have OCD, please.
okay. So, right, not everything is pathology, right? And
Right.
the way that I look at things is, how much does this that you're engaging in disrupt your life, disrupt functioning, right? And so, yeah. So basically, with OCD, reference that, do we all have a little bit of OCD in us? I'm gonna go ahead and say no, because a lot of people think that OCD is like, oh, I'm just really clean, I'm really organized, and while that can be true for some, not often the case. OCD can be comprised of extreme rumination and extreme compulsions and ritualistic behaviors that have nothing to do with being clean and tidy or even a germaphobe. Okay, there's that. But Yeah, I'm not a believer in pathologizing everything either or labeling everything either. The only purpose for me of a label is just to help you better understand yourself, not to make you feel crazy or
Hmm.
dysfunctional or there's something wrong with you. Absolutely not. It's just be like, oh, not alone. There's a name for this, there's a name for what I'm experiencing. It makes sense now. I'm not
Yeah, and actually,
alone.
and as you were saying, it's like OCD can come up in like different ways. It doesn't have to be like cleaning and such. But there was two people, one Ariana Grande and one Charlie D'Amelio, that they were talking about OCD. And Ariana Grande said in a recent interview that when she was shower, she needs to listen to this one song like 3 times to know that she was in the shower for long enough. I don't know if she still does it. I think she was kind of talking about her in past tense, or maybe she still does. I don't know. But yeah, that's a little bit not the usual. And then Charlie D'Amelio said that every time she travels, she always has like a mental breakdown because
What?
of the packing. The
Oh,
packing.
mm, that also sounds like a little bit of executive dysfunction there. So, to say, yeah, for me, like I've noticed that when I eat dinner, I want to
Mhm.
watch the same things over and over again. And I have my comfort shows that I watch on repeat. And my husband will
Mm.
be like, haven't you watched that already like 18 times? I'll still watch it.
Wow. So now I'm like really evaluating myself. Okay. So it's just, I think it's
Stop.
why? Why me? Nah, I'm not going to be like that. Okay. So I really feel like this is like a free session for me. Hell yeah.
I love that
Life
for
hack.
you.
Life hack. Not just kidding. I'm just messing around. Oh, it's so sweet. Okay. So let's transition into talking about the public. What role, okay, we said it again, it sounded like I was having a lips. What role do you think public awareness and education play in addressing and supporting individuals with CPTSD? How can we
Oh,
do better?
oh gosh, many ways to do better. First of all, when someone talks about their life experiences, don't meet them with these responses, everyone. Oh, it's worse. Oh, I went the same thing and it wasn't so bad. Oh, you'll feel better soon. Please don't do that. People just want to be listened to. 9 times out of 10, we don't want solutions. Wait for people to ask you if that's what they want. If they want advice, wait for people to request that from you. Just provide support, provide validation, provide a safe space. Say things like, I'm sorry to hear that happen to you. I'm really glad you shared that with me. And of course, make it your own, right? Add your own flavor. You don't want to sound like a robot, but have basic human empathy and understand that even if you didn't experience what that person experienced, make it less valid or less meaningful to them. So just creating that safe space.
Can we talk about something else? I hate when people, I was thinking about this today actually, and I really hate when people say, check your privilege.
Oh,
That I don't like it because, in a way, I feel like that is just invalidating people's life experiences. You kind of get what
you,
I'm saying? So it's
I,
like, for example, I would never tell people who have both great functioning eyes to check your privilege. So if someone's like complaining to me about, like, I don't know, they had a stomach ache for a week or just a different type of health concern that isn't as severe as mine, I would never say check your privilege. At least you have both your eyes. You know what I mean? I think, I mean, I guess it's like, and most people, I think I have an unpopular opinion. And I
no,
think
it's
it
not.
just,
No,
yeah,
it's not.
I mean, it is because a lot of people were saying it. Like, I was actually watching Ginny in Georgia
I
yesterday,
love
and there was a
it.
moment, yeah, and then there was a moment where she was saying like check your privilege to like this guy because he's like a white boy in a white town and this, and I'm like, and then he said to her, he was like, just because doesn't mean that I don't go through stuff. And he said that not his kid, his like friend just recently died. So it's
Oh,
just
wow.
basically saying, like, saying check your privilege somebody just because everything looks great on the outside and they have like what society says that is great or whatever, doesn't mean that they don't have anything to have challenges with. And then there was this Instagram comment that I saw today where this person was just sharing that they make homemade snacks for their kids instead of going and buying junk food. They were just basically just sharing that.
Oh,
And
that's
then one
cute.
person said to check their privilege. Not everyone can do that. And talking about like the busy life, busy mom, whatever. And then people were like, why do you got to say check your privilege? This girl is just literally just sharing what she likes to do. And so that's like what I'm saying. Like those two incidents, I just feel like a lot of people are using the whole check your privilege, but it's like, I feel like when you tell someone to check their privilege, you're pretty much just like shutting people down. Like if they're expressing something to you that's upsetting them, and you say check your privilege, that's just like you're masking yourself, saying like basically invalidating their feelings.
I think that for me, there's definitely a balance, and that's one that I try to work toward. It with compassion for others and also being authentic to myself, right? And with that said, I think it's so important and so key for me to be transparent. For example, I'm a plus size woman, and I have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
clients that come to me and are like, "Oh, I have a weight problem." And of course, for me, I'm like, "Please,
I wouldn't
and
say check your privilege.
no, no. So listen,
Yeah,
the thing is that I think about it and I'm like, this is relative. This is their
yeah,
life experience. This is really
exactly.
encroaching on their mental health. It's really affecting and impacting them. So I have to check
Mm-hmm.
my empathy, and I
Mm-hmm.
can make space for my discomfort around those feelings. I can make space for that in my own time. But I have to lead with compassion for my clients and what their life experiences are like. And I always say, like, it's a meme that I found on Instagram once. If just because someone's drowning in, say, 5 feet of water and someone's drowning in 12, we're all still drowning. Everybody's
Right.
drowning. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's fair to tit for tat. I do think it's grounding at times to check our privilege because it does help in certain situations, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that should be used in
Yeah.
response to weaponize someone's life
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think more of what I'm saying and what you totally make sense is that I feel like it's been overused for like
Hmm.
many things. Like people, I mean, where it started with check your privilege, like it made sense for the way it originated. But lately I've been noticing that people use it for everything these days. So I
Yeah.
guess that's kind of what I'm saying is like, I think it's just like the way they're using it. It's like it's basically covers up of them just being invalidating people's feelings and being a jerk. Like I think they're
Yes.
subconsciously doing that. And I
Yeah.
think, and this is just a thought that I had today after I saw that comment. And then this girl, like I said, all she's doing on her reels is just sharing that she likes to make homemade snacks for her kids and
That's
not go to the grocery
unfortunate.
store and buy snacks. And this person's probably watching this, being like person who has no time to do that and saying, check your privilege. It's like, what is this? What is the other woman doing that's so wrong? She's not saying, gosh, you have to do this. I don't care if you're working all the time. This is what you have to do. That's a different story, obviously. But she
Yeah.
wasn't doing
I
that. So I think that's what triggered me today. It got me thinking.
I think it's unfair, and just to add to that, I think it's unfair, and I think, it just comes with, unfortunately, people are always going to have something to say. Goes back to the point about bullying, right? Like
Yeah.
this woman is just living her life making snacks for her child, doing something completely benign, and like she's just existing, and someone had something to say about it. So, like if that's a thought that person had, have it own time and process that with your
Right.
therapist, but to go out of your way to leave a mean comment, it just to me speaks volumes about where you are in
Yeah.
your healing trajectory, and it's not very far in, clearly.
Yeah. I think that was just an example of because the whole originally check your privilege was more just kind of like in a way humbling people, which is reasonable. And then people are just now using it for attack.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think yeah, that's definitely what I was like getting at. Okay, yeah, we've been talking a lot. So let me transition to one more question here. Okay, so for people who may not be able to afford therapy and think, after listening to this, may think that they're struggling with CPTSD, which, by the way, disclaimer, don't diagnose yourself over listening to this episode. What resources would you recommend, like books, websites, support groups, and such, that would be for people who can't afford therapy?
Gosh, don't give up on therapy because there are therapists that do provide a sliding scale fee. And there are therapists that do accept different types of insurance, including Medicaid, including Oscar, including Ambetter. So there's different options out there. So don't give up on that entirely. But if that's just not an option for whatever reason, there's a lot of books. But one of my favorite books is The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, you like that one?
I do. I do. I do. And I know it's controversial for some.
I
What are your thoughts?
I thought it was good. I liked it.
I
It did when I
same.
did read it, I kind of like realized shit, I didn't realize how traumatized I was. And
Hmm.
some people can have that. I understand the controversy. People would think it's just gonna make it worse. You could think in that way, or you can think it made me realize some things. I need to work on some healing, different thought processes.
I love that book, and I know this is going to sound crazy to some, but I'm part of all the community Facebook groups. So an
Oh, really?
autoimmune, yep, I have an autoimmune disease. I joined the group for that. I have anxious
Okay.
attachment. I joined the group for that. Now,
Yeah.
again, not to be confused with therapy. This is not therapy, but it is a form of increasing your community and your support and having shared experiences with other people where you know, okay, this person goes through this too. I'm not alone. There's nothing like a sense of community.
Yeah.
So, I recommend that. There's also resources like 988. If you text that number or you call it, it's available 24/7. You can speak to a trained counselor at any time of
Hmm.
night if you're particularly in crisis situation.
Yeah. I'm just glad that they did that. It took a while for them to actually make it an emergency, but they did it, so that's progress at least.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely had to call before, and sometimes when you're a therapist, you like scrutinize, counselor, which is not nice of me. And I'll be like, okay, you could have said this, you could have done this, and I'm like, am I here to receive support or am I here to be critical? Because that's not nice of you, Olivia. So
Yeah, I know.
don't be afraid to tell people what you need from them and let them
Yeah,
know how they can support you. Expand your
yeah.
support system in general, your social support, maybe different activities. There's great applications like the Meetup app where people meet up and
Hmm.
do different things. People meet up and go to church if that's your cup of tea. People meet up and go for walks or go to the beach, whatever. Don't be afraid to
Hmm.
expand your social support network because that's the first thing every therapist is going to tell you.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're all social beings, so it just makes sense. Like the first priority is like meeting people and relating to people because we used to have tribes back in the day, and now it's like not a, it's like barely a thing now because of the way modern society is.
Yeah,
That could be a whole other
absolutely.
conversation.
Uh,
Hmm.
Definitely is. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So Olivia, so you're licensed in Florida. Are you licensed anywhere else?
Not yet. I am licensed in
Okay.
Florida and I'm currently not accepting any new patients, but I will be in about a month or two.
Okay, well, I'll put your Instagram handle on there just in case people just want to follow you until you're ready to accept new patients. And you clearly are a great therapist if you're all booked up.
I'm honored and I am blessed to do what I do each and every day. I am grateful that my clients have chosen me. I'm the lucky one.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, I appreciate you donating your time to my podcast because you've
Anytime.
given so much valuable advice, coming from a therapist, which in reality, you really are donating your time. So people who are listening to this are learning things based off of my personal problems.
I
But
am so happy to
I
be here.
volunteer myself. I volunteer myself.
I am so happy to be here, so grateful to be here and to be supporting you in this journey because I know you're healing out loud. And in so many
Hmm.
ways, that's helping others propel their
Yeah.
healing and move forward in their process.
Yeah, it's definitely benefits a lot of people. Well, thanks again for being on here, Olivia. And for everyone who's listening, hope you have a good rest of your day and stay tuned for next week's episode.